Gerai. Gerbiami kolegos,
Colleagues, we are hereby starting our afternoon work.
Skirtas laikas Baltijos valstybių bendradarbiavimas dėl Latvian regioną, bendros krizės
Afternoon topic
švelninimo priemonės ir tarptautinio
is
bendradarbiavimo vaidmuo.
related to cooperation of the Baltic states in reopening the region, joint measures to mitigate the impact of the crisis, and the role of international cooperation. Colleagues,
Iš naujo džiaugiuosi svečių iš kaimyninių ir broliškų
I'm always very happy to welcome
Giminingų pagal savo
our
prigimtį ir tradicijas
Baltic
mūsų
states
valstybių bendravimas ir
neighbors
bendradarbiavimas
here in Vilnius.
sustiprina mūsų
Our
pozicijas ir
cooperation and
argumentus,
communication
kuriais remiantis
is strengthening
galime
our
priimti ir pasiūlyti
position
sprendimus,
based on which we can offer solutions and decisions to competent authorities.
mokydamiesi vieni iš kitų, mes
While
galime
learning from each
paskleisti
other,
gerąją praktiką,
we
bet
can
kurioje
spread the good practice in any field of our life.
COVID-19 pandemija
COVID-19
tapo rimtu
pandemic
išbandymu
has
mūsų
become
šalių
a serious
ir
pandemic
parlamentų bendradarbiavimui.
in the cooperation of our countries and our parliaments. Nevertheless, I hope that by joint efforts and learning from each other, we can become even stronger
sukrėtimams.
when we leave this crisis.
Žinoma, daug padaryta, bet matome,
Of
kad buvo
course,
padaryta
a
ir
lot
klaidų.
has been
Ir
done.
dar daug ką
However,
galima
some
tobulinti.
mistakes have been made
Visiems jums
as well.
pateiktoje antrojoje išsamioje Baltijos valstybių bendradarbiavimo
In
per
the second
COVID-19 pandemijos sukeltą krizę analizėje, mūsų
analysis
pagrindinė
of the
išvada buvo
cooperation
ta,
of the Baltic
kad
states
mūsų
during the
šalys
pandemic,
sugebėjo spręsti su
we find the
COVID-19
conclusion that
susijusius
our
klausimus,
states have
susijusius klausimus ir daug
successfully
pasimokė iš ankstesnės patirties.
coped with the challenges related to
Mes
the
turime
pandemic and
nuolat
learned
analizuoti, kuriuose
their lessons.
kuriuose
We need to
būtini
analyze
esminiai patobulinimai
continuously
srityse ir
fields
kuriuose
improvements are
bendradarbiavimas būtų
required
veiksmingas.
and where the cooperation
Mes turime
is
ieškoti atsakymų,
effective,
mano galva,
can be
į
more
šiuos
effective.
klausimus. Kokios bendros
We
praktinės
need to
veiklos
find
turėtų
answers to
imtis
such questions
Baltijos
as to what
valstybės,
practical
kad
activities should
sušvelnintų COVID
the
krizės
Baltic
poveikį?
states
Koks
undertake
galėtų
to
būti
mitigate
Baltijos
the
valstybių
impact of
praktinis
the
atsakas,
crisis?
sprendžiant labiausiai
What
krizės
should
paveiktų
our
sektorių,
response be
įskaitant meną,
when it
pramogos,
comes to
rekreaciją,
the
apgyvendinimo,
sectors
maitinimo
which
paslaugas,
have been
švietimo
most
paslaugas ir kitas problemas?
heavily
Ar nebūtų
affected,
tikslinga
including the
Baltijos
arts,
valstybėm parengti bendrą
catering,
veiksmų,
tourism,
planą
maybe
COVID-19 keliamam problemams
an
spręsti
action
šiame
plan,
regione? Nežiūrint vis
a
dar
joint action
egzistuojančios
plan could be effective.
pandemijos grėsmės, remdamiesi jums pateiktą
Pandemic.
Baltijos valstybių bendradarbiavimo per COVID-19 pandemijos sukeltą krizę
Analysis of our cooperation during the COVID-19 pandemic shows that our governments, when acting separately or together, have managed to effectively resolve the issues related to COVID-19. The close cooperation of our experts also indicates successful cooperation because many actions have been based on the conclusion of experts. Timely exchange of information about the epidemiological situation, close contacts, both personal and interinstitutional, have been quite successful. We should improve the situation. We should improve the cooperation in resolving the external border issues. If we need to reintroduce control at the border, we should coordinate our actions and use the existing infrastructure wisely. A great deal of fake news have been spread during the pandemic, trying to split the society and its trust to further rely on the values that unite our societies. We should find ways to better inform our societies about the vaccines that are accessible and encourage people to choose vaccination. the planning of movement, if necessary, has to be improved not only during the pandemic, but on a larger scale as well. In order to better prepare for crisis in the future, we need to discuss the cooperation on the regional level. It is important that crisis has helped to resolve some issues, for example, to get ready for extraordinary situations and pandemics in the future. Another positive thing is the reorganization of the healthcare sector, also the development of digitalization. The pandemic forced companies to establish remote working places, and cybersecurity measures have become extremely important. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the main points which I had in mind to transfer to you. Let me wish you productive activities. Now I would like to give the floor to Evika Silina. Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister of Latvia. The floor is yours.
Ir jeigu galima, laikykimės reglamento iki 10 minučių.
And I would like to ask you to stick to 10 minutes time frame, if you can.
Good afternoon. Honorable parliamentarians, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to participate in the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly. This year is a momentous one, as we celebrated the 30th anniversary of restoring the independence of our countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. I would also like to congratulate all of you on the 30th anniversary of the Baltic Assembly. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit us all hard and continues to affect all areas of our lives. There have been disappointments as well as success stories during this time. The pandemic highlighted our weaknesses, crisis preparedness and management mechanisms, problems with economic resilience when supply chains and freedom of movement of people and goods are affected. The pandemic also highlighted the problems of societal resilience to disinformation. Looking back at these last 2 years, we can see that the unity of the Baltic states is strongest in the face of crisis situations. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were able to mobilize quickly and organize close cooperation at all levels. Among the positive examples, the creation of the Baltic travel bubble, already mentioned today, also mutual support in the repatriation of our citizens. It is important to maintain this close cooperation in the future. I would like to thank our colleagues from Lithuania, because recently we made this agreement on supplying additional Pfizer vaccines to Latvia, and this is with the help of our Lithuanian colleagues. And I hope that Latvia will be able to help you in a similar way if it's necessary. Dear all, this summer there was another crisis apart from the COVID-19 pandemic, namely the hybrid attacks organized by the Belarusian regime on the EU's external border with Belarus. We all face this crisis to a greater or lesser extent, and we see that the solidarity and close cooperation between the Baltic states and Poland at all levels, in the institutional, foreign, interior and defense areas, is our strongest weapon. We are particularly grateful to the support of Estonia. This country was not directly confronted with the flows of illegal entrants organized by the Lukashenko regime, yet Estonia has consistently provided support and selflessly engaged on this issue, both within the EU and the UN. This has been very significant, so that we, all three, the Baltic states, can defend our common position, and I also would like to thank our colleagues from Poland. We highly appreciate the ongoing cooperation of the Baltic states in strengthening the security of the region. Ever since the 2014 occupation of Crimea, we have been preparing to defend against conventional threats from the east. As demonstrated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the hybrid attacks on our borders by the Belarusian regime, threats can take many forms. Building societal resilience in the fight against hybrid threats has gained much greater importance. The COVID crisis has only intensified the use of various hybrid measures by state and non-state actors, which is why strengthening societal resilience to hybrid threats is one of the most significant tasks we face. The Baltic states must continue to address the threats coming from the east, namely from Russia and Belarus. It is essential to strengthen cooperation, our joint crisis preparedness, and resilience at national, regional, and EU level. The free movement of people and goods within the EU must be safeguarded as far as possible. This also requires close cooperation and coordination between institutions and line ministries. Beforehand, resilience was viewed more in military terms, but now the COVID-19 crisis has shown that resilience needs to cover a much broader scope of areas. It can be in the fields of economy, connectivity, infrastructure, and energy. It is attested by the high energy prices, which clearly demonstrate the vulnerability and dependence of the Baltic states and Europe as a whole on Russian supplies. The answer is clear. We need to step up investment in the development of renewable energy sources and in the construction of energy infrastructure together with the rest of Europe. We can strengthen our economic resilience by modernizing our economies through green and digital transition, by taking a smart approach to diversifying our supply chains, by producing more safely and closer to home, as well as by educating the public. The COVID-19 crisis also highlighted the importance of digital solutions and infrastructure. Here, the Baltic states can set examples of good practice for the rest of Europe. The provision of digital services in the common Baltic area via Baltica and cross-border 4G and 5G network connectivity are just a few examples where work is already underway with vast potential for cooperation. We need to keep moving forward with energy and transport infrastructure projects that are important to us. A shared vision and understanding of strategic issues among the Baltic states is a prerequisite for their successful implementation. Rail Baltica has a key role to play in the post-crisis economic recovery, passenger mobility, and connectivity to the rest of Europe. Next year, Latvia will host the summit of the Three Seas Initiative. This is an excellent opportunity to attract investment to develop the region's infrastructure. As the epidemiological situation improves, ways must be found to revitalize and promote cooperation in tourism. As demonstrated by the Baltic bubble at the beginning of the pandemic, there is huge potential for domestic tourism, which we can strengthen through close cooperation between line ministries and tourism associations. Our top priority is the same. It is increasing public vaccination coverage. The biggest challenge here is motivating the public to get the vaccine. Joint action is needed to combat misinformation against the safety of vaccines. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2022, Latvia will take over from Lithuania the presidency in the Baltic Assembly and the Baltic Council of Ministers. We will continue the projects initiated by the previous presidencies to ensure continuity of the previous presidencies, thus enabling us to achieve better results in working towards stability and sustainable development of the region. We have identified the security, prosperity, and growth of the region as the priority issues. Our motto consists of 3 Ps: partnership, prosperity, and protection. We have identified the following priority issues for the Baltic Council of Ministers. 1. Strengthening regional security and defense, countering hybrid threats and disinformation. 2. Modernizing economy by advancing green and digital transition, connectivity, and development of regional infrastructure projects. And 3. Strengthening strategic and ambitious Eastern Partnership and support to civil society in Belarus. Honorable parliamentarians, thank you for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you next year in Riga.
I thank Evika Silina, Please wait here. Maybe questions will be asked. Oh, any questions? If there are no questions, then we will let Ms. Evika Silina go. You were so precise that we have no questions. Regina Ločmelė from the BA Committee on Health.
Hello, dear friends, parliamentarians from all the Baltic states. Next year, Latvia will be the country that will take over leadership in the committee, in the Health, Welfare and Family Committee. We truly respect the agenda that was announced by the Estonian and Lithuanian presidencies. But this year, to my mind, as the head of the committee, all the three Baltic states need to focus on priority issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic issues. Now I need to explain myself. What do I mean by this? What is the plan for the next year? First, according to the information I have, each of the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, has allocated in their budgets funding for scientific research regarding the COVID-19 virus. Our scientists have already come to certain conclusions, but we need to have a broad discussion among scientists so that we can answer very specific questions posed by our public. These are topical issues they are interested in. First, regarding the vaccine. Which exact vaccine regarding a specific variant of the virus is more efficient? Second, for how long is a specific vaccine valid to protect a person from getting infected? We also need to research people who get into hospitals, even if they are vaccinated. We need to ensure that each person in the hospital is tested for the level of antibodies so that we can determine the level of antibodies which does not protect a person from getting infected. We need to join our forces to understand what kind of vaccines that are currently developed outside of the borders of the EU could be recognized as efficient. Here I could give you the example where the Baltic states did not coordinate their actions at the parliamentary level regarding vaccination and the recognition of a COVID certificate. For instance, recently Estonia recognized the Sputnik vaccine as a possible vaccine to get the vaccination certificate. Neither Latvia nor Lithuania has not recognized this vaccine, but probably the colleagues from Estonia have some sort of data that we don't have. Then Lithuania has recognized the presence of antibodies in a human body, even if a person has not the disease or vaccine, and this is accepted to get the certificate. In Latvia, again, this is not accepted, but Lithuanian colleagues have their own argumentation, which might be convincing to colleagues from Latvia and Estonia. Maybe not. But we need a discussion on this. We need to concentrate on financing and giving funding to science, to integrating scientific research results, and constant discussion regarding the specific context of the pandemic. So area is research in the hospitals, in other areas, but anyway, this is the most important aspect, research. The second area is the action of our three countries abroad. So what I mean by that is in the relations with other countries. First, in what way is it a coordinate way when we ask help to combat the consequences of the pandemic? Currently, in Latvia, there's a very important and, there's the situation with the morbidity of COVID-19. And Latvia's government has already considered asking help, international help, and we have already received it, both devices and equipment for hospitals, and also in other areas where we think about attracting doctors and nurses from other countries. So will this be done in a coordinated way in all three Baltic states, and what conditions does that require? We have already had an agreement on emergency services in Latvia and Lithuania in the border area. So we have experience in this field. We could repeat such sort of cooperation in areas where we are close to one another, the border areas and others. Next, whether it is important to understand whether we will help to third countries with vaccines, whether we will have coordinated these measures among our countries. Will we set our citizens as priority citizens, as priority people to help, judging by the validity of vaccines, and if the term of validity is coming to an end, whether we will give them to other countries? I think this is an important topic for discussion. And of course, we also need to talk about the recognition of third country certificates. It is not acceptable that a citizen of our countries gets sick in Egypt or Turkey and they receive a positive test. They have recovered from the COVID-19 virus and they have this medical document, but in Latvia this is not recognized and they are not given a COVID certificate. Here again, we might have a discussion and a coordinated approach to maybe which third countries could be recognized in this area. Ms. Silja already mentioned the fight against disinformation, which is very important. Here we could, as the Baltic Assembly, deal with this. We just gave the Baltic Assembly awards for contribution in the arts, and I think the next year we could create a prize for the best advertising campaign, maybe. Or maybe we could even create one advertising campaign for the three Baltic states, where we invite famous musicians and actors to address the inhabitants of all Baltic states with one single message: get vaccinated, protect your health, and in this way protect the economies of the Baltic states and our joint future. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Regina. Do you have any questions? Professor Masiulis. Mr. Chairman, dear colleague, I understand. Well, why Sputnik vaccine is and its validation is an important in your country due to the ethnic situation in your country. In Lithuania, this is not an important issue. I think that Lithuania follows the EU decisions in terms of recognition of different vaccines. We actually follow other EU countries in terms of vaccines, in terms of certificates. if other EU member states recognize Sputnik vaccine, then we will follow suit. But as a politician, I really doubt whether we should do that. Regina, could you answer to that?
Thank you for this comment, but I would like to stress that I did not say that the Sputnik vaccine is good or bad. I did not imply that. I just mentioned that in Estonia, this vaccine is already recognized, and this means that people vaccinated with the Sputnik vaccine can enter Estonia without a test result. So I just invited you to have this discussion, a broader discussion, because it was yesterday that my colleagues in the Parliament of Latvia invited me to find this information from Lithuanian colleagues because they recognize the level of antibodies in the body as a sufficient measure to issue a COVID certificate to Lithuanian citizens. Because Latvia is acting according to the measures set by the European Commission, and Lithuania differs in this field.
Ačiū labai, ponia Regina.
Thank you, Regina. One more question from Professor Linas Slušnys. I want to thank Mr. Slušnys. We worked together for many years in unity, and we always felt collegial support to each other, and it's an honor to give the floor to him. Mr. Chairman, Madam Lochmiller, it was a pleasure to hear you. I heard about the plans on scientific research on the effectiveness of vaccines, on the formation of immunity from the vaccine. And actually, all this research is being made in the USA, in Germany, in Britain. The area is very wide here. My question is it worthwhile doing the same in the Baltic states when actually we all have this information published in famous journals? Maybe we should look for other areas, and these areas could make us unique in the world, and we would be published in international journals, medical journals. Could you, Madam Lochmiller, answer the question, because we're running out of time?
I will try to be brief. Thank you for your comment. Here I would like to say that we need to understand the specifics of our region, of our countries. Just by taking into account our climate and the health situation of our citizens, we can already see that in this pandemic, we have a unique reaction to a specific virus, and this reaction differs from person to person. And here, even scientists and primarily doctors compare the effects of COVID-19 to the Russian roulette. So it is completely unpredictable whether a strong athlete will have a really bad reaction and have heavy consequences from the virus, and what impacts this result. Will this man have to go to the hospital on the second day, or when he feels he has pneumonia from this virus? So there are very many questions that remain unanswered. So people complain about the fact that we do not have strong and definite instructions on what to do, whether to stay at home when we feel kind of okay, but maybe we don't even recognize where we are on the brink of a catastrophe regarding our health. So I would like to invite scientists to set their own agenda regarding research. Meanwhile, our parliament should support scientists and finally recognize that we do not understand more than the scientists. The task of us politicians is to give you financing and funding.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. Let me conclude our discussion. I thank Regina. I thank you all for questions. In this difficult time with the pandemic and the unknowing we are facing, we are all vigilant and stressed. We don't have another choice. We need to teach our people to protect themselves and others. Even with this tension in the political field, it is easy for us to blame others and to undermine trust. But in order to ensure successful cooperation, we must learn to work and learn together. Let us tolerate each other and let us resolve all the differences in the most honorable manner that we have done so far. Thank you. I now give the floor to Kęstutis Masiulis. He will take my place as a chairperson.
I would just like to thank my colleague, Mr. Vinkus, who has already selflessly and for 3 years worked here at the Baltic Assembly, at the Health, Welfare and Family Committee. He has done everything necessary to reach the best progress in the Baltic states. Thank you.
Yes, we will. Sveiki, gerbiami kolegos.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to sit in this rostrum and to chair this discussion. We will start the session 2 on energy security in the Baltics, state of play after the synchronization with the European electric power networks and power trade with non-EU countries. I will be chairing this discussion in cooperation with Vice Chairs of the committee, Mr. Rainis Nuotinš and Mr. Erkis Savisaar, my colleagues from Estonia and Latvia. Colleagues, the Baltic states know very well the importance of energy security. I could remind you many things. We had many difficulties with the oil after regaining our independence. We had oil refinery in Lithuania. We had problems with that. We also had problems with gas because we sold gas at a much higher price than Germans. We understood that energy resources are the tool of tension, political tension. This is not an economic issue, but it is an issue of our security and the security in the region. Many aspects affect the energy security of the Baltic states, including dependence on energy export, increasing demand, and others. In 2025, the transition to synchronous operation with the frequency area of continental Europe will be finished and power trade with Russia will be terminated. As we all know, the synchronization process has been challenging, and I believe also that first years after 2025 will not be easy for our countries. For this reason, we need to talk about the situation in the region and how will power trade in the Baltics look in the year 2025. We need to prepare ourselves in order to have as fewer difficulties. Therefore, let us start a discussion about energy security in the Baltic states. I want to give the floor to an esteemed expert from Estonia, Secretary General for Energy and Mineral Resources of the Ministry of Economics and Communications of Estonia, Mr. Timo Tatar. Please stick to 10-minute requirement, and then you will be able to join the discussion and ask questions. So, Mr. Tatar is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maybe you would like to come here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Baltic Assembly, dear parliamentarians, I'm really glad to address today here you with on that important topic. Indeed, the energy security is a topic which importance is increasing with every day. Even this year emphasizes very well the importance of energy security and the importance of having secure and stable and sustainable energy supplies. This is also one of the key reasons why Baltic states have now more than 5 years worked together to achieve the capability of desynchronize Baltic states from Russian and Belarusian electricity systems. This has been one of the most strategic projects of cooperation in energy field in Baltic states, and I'm really glad that it's not only important for Baltic states, but the European Commission has expressed with its deeds the same level of understanding about the project's importance to European Union as such. The aim is to cease the technical interdependence between Baltic power systems and Russian and Belarusian power systems, and therefore increase the energy security of Baltic states. I'm glad to say that the Baltic states are well in budget and well in time with preparations of Baltic power system desynchronization by end of 25. And as Mr. Chairman said, the idea is to gain also a independence of the trade from third countries after the same date, so that once Baltic states are synchronizing themselves with continental Europe, there will be no trade with third countries, between third countries and Baltic states. The synchronization project actually involves not only Baltic states, but also Poland, and there are some works needed to be done also in Finland. The most important elements of the synchronization project is installment of synchronous condensers in all Baltic states, retrofitting overhead lines between the Baltic states, and most importantly, and the most expensive element is building a new interconnection, a subsequent interconnection between Lithuania and Poland to allow free trade of electricity once the synchronization project is completed in end of 25. I can say on Estonian behalf that all those important system improvement projects are also tendered and entered into the contract, and I know that my Baltic colleagues from Latvia and Lithuania are not far away, so clearly right now I can say that the project is well in budget and well in time, and we are ready to synchronize by end of 25 with great confidence. Of course, before that we have to conduct several system tests and system studies to make sure really that the capabilities which we are building are there and ready and operational. Clearly, the project is quite expensive. Its overall budget is 1.8 billion euros, and I'm glad to say that majority of that budget is already secured and co-financed by European Commission. So far, we have seen an unprecedented level of co-financing from European Commission by 75%. So 75% of the overall costs so far have been covered by European Commission. And only a couple of weeks ago, Baltic states submitted the last stage investment application in the level of 178 million euros. And of course, over here as well, we expect the same level of co-financing from European Commission. And after that, hopefully very soon, in the first quarter of next year, we can hopefully then say that the project is in its entirely, in 100% covered with financing. Clearly, the main aim of the synchronization is to cut the interdependence of Baltic power system management from Russian and Belarusian systems, but clearly this is not the only aim of the project. The aim is also to ensure the same level of energy security and energy supply which we have enjoyed so far also after 25. And clearly the fact that after 25 we cannot rely anymore on the trade, on the electricity coming from third countries, means that we have to cover some of the supplies by our own or by neighboring EU member states. This means that the Baltic states in coming years, until 25 and also beyond, is a very attractive place for new investments into renewable energy, but also new investments to the power plants which can supply a system services which so far have been provided to some extent by Russian counterparts. I'm talking about the frequency control systems. So clearly the synchronization project offers a good investment opportunities for market participants to the renewables, but also to other system services. We in Estonia are already witnessing a wave of new renewable energy investments. In a couple of years, we have seen an installment of up to 500 megawatts of PV, photovoltaic power plants in Estonia, and we are introducing a subsidy scheme to accelerate the uptake of wind energy in coming years. So we expect in coming years to see hundreds of megawatts of new wind energy in Estonia, and I'm quite confident that my Baltic colleagues are introducing the same policies. We are already preparing also, together with Latvia, to see in our waters offshore wind farms. Clearly, offshore wind farms today are a bit more expensive than onshore installations, but we have to do preparations already now to be fit for offshore wind energy approximately by 2030. As everywhere in Europe, the importance of dispatchable energy supply, meaning power plants which are not reliant on intermittent weather, but which can be controlled, is a deficit. This is also a deficit in Baltic states, and Estonian transmission system operator have announced a need to have at least 1,000 megawatts of dispatchable capacities available on all times in Estonian power systems. Right now, those dispatchable capacities are there, but Estonian government is clearly ready to introduce additional measures to make sure that those dispatchable capacities are there. The more we can rely on dispatchable capacities, the more we have the confidence that the dispatchable capacities are available. Actually, the higher we can go with the penetration of renewable electricity generation. This is the logic which we are following everywhere. And by those statements, I conclude my remarks, and I'm open for discussion and questions. Thank you.
Gerbiamas ponė Tatar, dėkoju Jums.
Thank you to Mr. Timo Tatar. And now I would really like to offer you to ask questions. Yes, Mr. Vilkunas, please. Thank you. I have the following question. What's going to happen if by 2025 we do not finalize the synchronization process? Because I see a lot of hindrances. The European Commission has expressed its understanding, but it is not finally responsible for our welfare. Or if we have a collapse, for instance, first of all, the inflation, we are going to run short of finances, like in the case of Rail Baltica, then getting disconnected from the Brel, then connected to Poland. We have some data that Poland does not have any synchronization with any other state, and that it purchases electricity from Belarus from time to time. The closure of their coal power plants also raises problems for the country. So, do we have a proper risk assessment as far as synchronization is concerned, looking into Poland's position and also the capacities from Estonia and Latvia, which is not going to be sufficient, having in mind the interconnections with Poland? As far as I understand, the situation can even deteriorate, because as I know, Estonia is buying power from Finland, and whereas Finland is buying power from Russia. Maybe when Russia is in the joint network, it's not so bad. Let's say back in 1990, when we had problems with fuel, we had electricity continuously because we had common interconnections. Thank you, but I would like to ask everyone to be brief in the future.
Thank you for raising your concerns. I can only assure you that before system operators entered into the implementation phase, there was years and years of thorough studies conducted to make sure that the system we are entering in, the technical configuration of the system, is not worse than the system we are exiting from. Clearly, there are challenges in European energy market which needs to be tackled. But clearly, the better is the interconnections between the EU member states, the better the internal energy market works, the easier it is for the member states to tackle those challenges together. Clearly, Poland has to also transition its energy system and exit from coal. They are right now working heavily to introduce nuclear energy in Poland. I can only say that such energy transition is necessary in all countries in EU, whether we are doing the synchronization project or not. So the synchronization project is aiming to seize or remove the risk we are seeing, which is related to the fact that still Moscow is controlling how the power system is managed in Baltic states. But it doesn't remove the other challenges which we have to face. I mentioned already the need to have the dispatchable capacities available. So those challenges are still there, and we have to work with them in any case, whether we are synchronizing or not. And I can also comment that so far the cooperation with the Polish counterparts have been excellent. So I haven't seen any second thoughts and doubts coming from Poland. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Erkki Savisaar has a question.
Thank you, Timo, for this overview. But I would like you to assure us that we are really on track, because this 2025 is in 3 years. It's almost like tomorrow. So can you ensure us that there are enough production capacities to meet our needs after 2025, and not only on windy or sunny days, but every day and night? And also a question about the frequency. Will it be stable and reliable? Because our people are actually not prepared for unreliable frequency in their homes. So will be the quality and availability of the electricity after 2025 as good as today? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savisaar. So first about the quality of the power system. There are countries who have done the same desynchronization with much smaller period of time. So in 1990s, for instance, Czech Republic synchronized themselves quite quickly within a couple of years. We in the Baltic states have prepared the synchronization or desynchronization for more than 10 years. The first discussions, the first studies were initiated in early 2000s. And we have spent so much time only for the single purpose that we should have the same level of power system quality which we are enjoying today. This is the reason why we are installing those quite expensive and quite innovative synchronous condensers into our power systems to make sure that every time, even during those times where there is a lot of wind and a lot of solar into the system, there is enough inertia in the system which provides the frequency. Therefore, I can assure you that we are doing no discounts whatsoever with the synchronization project in terms of our expectations about the system quality and frequency. Your first question about whether there is enough electricity or generation capacity available in Baltic states. I can assure you that every year the European transmission system operators together are conducting a study, which is a mid-term generation adequacy report, where they are analyzing the very same question, whether there is enough generation capacity available within the next 10 years in this region and everywhere else in Europe. And so far, they have always reached to the conclusion that even under the most stressful situations, the energy supply is granted. Clearly, of course, the situation is deteriorating. I mentioned that in the future there might be situations where states have to introduce extra measures to introduce those power plants, but so far, we are seeing that in Europe there are enough generation capacities even under such years, unusual years, which we are witnessing this year, where there is extra low level of Norwegian hydro energy in the market. And one point I want to stress, those studies which the system operators are doing are not taking into account the import possibilities which we are right now enjoying from the third countries. So all those studies are made only relying on generation capacities, only relying on interconnections which are within Europe, within European Union, not in the third countries. Thank you, Erkki.
Gerbiami kolegos, noriu priminti, mes klausimą.
Colleagues, I have to remind you that we have just 3 minutes for questions and answers. We are Nordic representatives. We have to be brief. We have to be punctual. So, Rainis Znotinš, please, your question.
Questions. One is connected with what Erkki already asked, and this is basically, in my mind, one of the biggest opportunities to be safe in energy sector is to produce all the energy ourselves. So how do you see, is that possible for Baltic states to produce all the energy we need ourselves? And what approximately could it cost for us? How much we need to invest to achieve that? This is one first question. The second one is related, but not in all cases. Some states in the European Union are completely against nuclear power plants, like Germany, but some are still building them. And there are new, smaller, much safer nuclear power plants, and that energy is considered to be green in most cases. So what do you think of nuclear power plant opportunity for Baltic states? Is that an option or is it not? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. So the first question, whether Baltic states can supply all the electricity they need by themselves, then clearly the answer is yes. But of course, question is about the cost. How much does it cost? Okay. So, and of course, then it poses a question that why on earth, European Union has spent millions and millions of euros to build up or set up the internal energy market. So, and the answer is why Baltic states and European Commission have spent so much money to build out the European internal energy market is that this challenge of supplying affordable electricity to all consumers in Europe is much easier and affordable to solve if we are doing it together. For instance, if in Finland there is more dispatchable generation available, in Baltics there is more intermittent capacities available, in Sweden and in Norway there is more capabilities to store energy in a pump hydro way, then combining all those capabilities makes the energy supply to all EU citizens more affordable. Of course, we can, do all the tasks ourselves, but I would say that in that case, we would overinvest, and the final cost for the consumer would be simply too expensive. It makes much more sense to combine our capabilities, which we are having in different EU member states. Your second question about the nuclear energy. Clearly, there are states where the nuclear energy has an important role in their energy balance, like in Finland, in France, in Czech Republic. I already mentioned that Poland is planning to introduce nuclear energy. And clearly there are states who are religiously against of nuclear energy, so Luxembourg, Austria, for instance. And this is the reason why on an EU level there has never been sort of a wide overarching agreement whether nuclear energy is a acceptable solution or not. This is the place where actually the member states have quite a wide flexibility to make their own decision whether to introduce nuclear energy or not. Clearly, nuclear energy is an energy source which is dispatchable, which is zero or near zero emissions. And clearly, this is the reason why nuclear energy has a lot of benefits or a lot of beauties. But clearly, on the other hand, it is very capital expensive. And if a country makes decision to introduce nuclear, then this decision is not just building a new wind farm, which you can decommission in 20 years and forget. It is a solution where you have to live with the next generations. You have to take care of the nuclear waste. Clearly, Lithuania is not the place where I have to explain that much further. In Lithuania, there is an example of Ignalina, where Lithuanian state and my colleagues in energy ministry in Lithuania are working every day to decommission the plant. So clearly that this decision is a tough one, and it has to be thoroughly discussed, because the most expensive strategy is to build the nuclear power plant and then make a referendum and say that let's decommission it. So this is the political risk always coming with nuclear energy, and the decision therefore has to be really well thought through before it is made. Whether Baltic states can in some day introduce a new nuclear power plant, I would say why not, especially if those small modular reactor type of nuclear plants are becoming available, and they are as attractive as they seem right now on the paper. But of course, right now they are on a paper. Let's see once the first of such plants are built somewhere, and then let's see whether it is so attractive as it seems on paper. Thank you.
Thank you to the speaker, and I would like to suggest to stop asking questions, and thank you for your answers and your presentation. Yes, Lithuania really has its experience with nuclear power, and as a politician myself, I was backing the idea to build a new one. The nation has decided otherwise, and as we heard, it involves a great deal of political risk to build a nuclear object and then shut it down, as it was in Germany, for example. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the speakers, to all the friends from Estonia and Latvia. And now we have to shift to another topic. I would like to therefore invite my colleague Audrius Petrošius, and we are going to speak about the role of the Baltic states in addressing the security challenges near the external borders. Mrs. Inesa Vojka, member of the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly, should join Audrius Petrošius as well.
Ačiū.
Gerbiami kolegos,
Dear colleagues, I want to join the congratulations to the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly. It is an honor for me to chair this committee meeting. My colleague Inesa is a little bit late. She will join us at the end of the meeting. Kęstutis took a bit of our time, so I will try not to expand. Today we will speak on the role of the Baltic states in addressing the security challenges near the external borders of the EU. It is not a secret to all of you that Lithuania, Latvia and Poland have been dealing with the democratic regime's attempts to destabilize the situation in our countries and the whole EU for the past months. Our countries are being punished for supporting the Belarusian people and their wish for a legitimate leader of the country. The regime of Alexander Lukashenko carries out methods of hybrid warfare at the border with Belarus. The security of our countries and the EU is tested with groups of illegal migrants. Every day we hear the news that our border guards prevent groups of people from illegally entering our countries from Belarus. And yet we have not found a sustainable solution to this problem, and that threatens the security of the whole EU. The challenge continues to persist, and therefore we can start a discussion about the security challenges near the external borders of the EU in the Baltic states. I want to give the floor to our esteemed expert, Mr. Kęstutis Lančinskas, Vice Minister of the Interior of Lithuania. I invite you to try to have a speech in a limit of 10 minutes. The floor is yours, Mr. Lančinskas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen from the Baltic Assembly, Excellencies, members of Parliament. It is an honor for me to represent the Ministry of the Interior of Lithuania. This topic is very important in the year 2021. We had many challenges in this year at our state border. Previously, Lithuania and other Baltic states did not have similar challenges before. The role of the Baltic states in addressing these challenges is essential. We are on the front lines. We have to beat the threat and to protect the border of the Baltic states and the external border of the EU. What is the situation now? The situation is related not only to migration. We are faced with a hybrid attack. It is an attack against the entire Western world and democratic countries. It is an attack against our countries and the European Union as a whole. Because our countries support Belarus, people of Belarus. Our countries are a safe place for people of Belarus who are being persecuted due to their political positions.
After the EU sanctions, Lukashenko said that he will flood the EU with migrants and drugs as well as radioactive waste. Belarus will not stop the flows of migrants because it is too costly an effort. Later on, he said that he can stop the flow, but he will not do this free of charge. This is an open threat for us all. Consequently, in a few years, the number of illegal migrants is over 4,000. It is 50-fold as large as in previous years. What are the objectives of the regime? With its actions, Lukashenko's regimes want to undermine our position on the illegitimacy of his regime. He thinks that by instrumentalizing migration and playing with the fate of innocent people, by pushing them to our borders, will make our other countries forget the situation in Belarus, where the situation is really poor in terms of human rights and democracy. In this attack, the Belarusian regime upholds no rules and tests the red lines. Belarusian institutions engage in that, including the military, the border services. A push-in method is systematically used, trying to find ways to use the situation in Afghanistan and to open new ways of illegal migration by new flights and creating new routes. What is our role and what actions we took? In this attack against the European Union, our countries sustained the biggest threat. We became the shield of the EU border. We took political, legal, and diplomatic steps. The format of regular meetings of the Baltic states and Poland was established. In Lithuania and Latvia, emergency situations were announced and enhanced border protection measures were introduced. As well as targeting the illegal migrants to our border posts in order to stop the secondary migration into the European Union. We were not alone. We attracted the attention and help and assistance of EU institutions and agencies. It helped us to stabilize the situation. I thank my colleagues from Estonia and Latvia for their constant contacts, for coordination of intelligence activities, as well as for their assistance provided. I repeat myself, our responsibility is to ensure the control of the external border, make it efficient, because our countries are not the target of illegal migrants. What are further steps? National measures are insufficient, therefore common decisions on the EU level are needed. The hybrid actions of Belarus shows that we need sustainable decisions in changing EU legislation. The legislation of the EU in line with the new reality need to ensure that countries are able to react to hybrid attacks by different regimes. Most importantly, the changes in EU legislation should be targeted at stronger protection of the external border and prevention of irregular migration, rather than the solution of the consequences. Lithuania has drafted an idea document about the necessary changes in EU legislation. It became the foundation for the 12 member states that was sent to the European Commission. I'm glad that Latvia and Estonia supported this initiative and signed the letter. Austria, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Greece, and other countries signed this letter. Other countries expressed their support in the Council of Ministers of the Interior. They agree that we need to enhance irregular migration and the control of external borders. The funding of the EU thus has to be ensured for that. The conclusions of the European Council, the European Commission is urged to propose new changes to the EU legislation and necessary funding in order to ensure a necessary and immediate response to hybrid attacks by third countries by using irregular migration. Thank you very much for inviting me here to present the situation at the eastern border of the EU.
Thank you to Mr. Klenčinskas for his comprehensive presentation, the actions that are being taken, future that is ahead of us. Now we have time for questions. Andrius Mazuronis has registered to ask a question. Thank you, Vice Minister. Concentrated and comprehensive presentation, which in my view is rightly reflecting the situation. I have a few questions to you. One is, when we speak about Belarus, I have a feeling that we all know that Belarus is nothing else but Russia's satellite. And in the international arena, we sometimes hear the thought that the key to solving this problem is in Moscow rather than Belarus. Would you agree with such assumptions? And if so, what the international community has to do on the level of the European Union, for example? And the second question, which is also quite important, I believe, is that a few weeks ago, with the colleagues from the National Security and Defense, we went to Ukraine and met representatives of various special services representing Ukraine. And we heard from them a very interesting idea that there is a big number of people gathered in Belarus, depending on the intensity of the flights. And the number of people there is a destabilizing factor for the Belarusian regime itself, because there are clashes with local population and other conflicts. I agree that this really exists, And maybe if we manage to close borders, the regime in Belarus itself could be facing very serious problems when they try to impose the challenge on the European Union. Thank you for the question. I would be quite laconic as far as the first question is concerned. If Russia and Belarus are planning merging of the two states, we can probably make an assumption that those questions are being coordinated between the two. As far as the second question is concerned, yes, indeed, we are observing the situation, looking at the situation in Belarus. All Lithuanian services are actively engaged. There are many speculations as far as the number of illegal migrants is concerned. We are not quite sure about the number, but as new flights are emerging, others are being closed. There are some travel agencies that have exceptional authorization to organize such flights. It is my personal opinion, however, but I think that the Belarusian regime is creating problems for itself, which it is going to face in the near future, because Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland are undertaking successfully serious measures. So the increasing number of people in the winter season may really cause numerous problems. Thank you so much. Now I would like to give the floor to Inesa Voika, member of the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly from Latvia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister, for introducing us to the accomplishments that have been carried out till now, and for the complicated situation we are now facing. And I would also like to thank Lithuania for accepting this first strike. You showed what the problem is, and you also outlined the possible solution to the situation with Belarus. This allowed Latvia to prepare itself better. We in the Baltic Assembly, we have adopted 2 statements regarding this situation to attract the international attention to the matter. I also have a question. It is regarding our joint steps in the nearest future, because when Latvia takes over the presidency in the Baltic Assembly, we are to keep this matter in our agenda. So my question is, what do you think what we as the Baltic states can do together to attract the attention of our colleagues in the European Union and their attention to solving it? We know that statements there have been from the European Commissioner regarding the fact that the EU policy in general is directed towards not building fences around the external border of the EU. Nevertheless, our security, the security of the Baltic states, is the security of the EU. So what would you offer to us as the Baltic states in terms of joint action to bring attention to this matter?
Well, my answer is to continue doing what we have been doing together, putting efforts together, joint position of the EU institutions, joint efforts on all the levels in Europe, showing that the geopolitical situation is changing. And maybe I will repeat what I've already said. It was thanks to joint efforts that we have achieved excellent results. Our initiatives related to the amendment of the Code of Schengen, let's say, have been taken into consideration. The discussions organized by the Commission will start in the near future. So my proposal is to coordinate our position, to go forward, and we will be successful. We already have 14 countries supporting us. Germany, Belgium are talking with us on this matter. So let's work together and we will achieve our goal. Thank you, Inessa, for your question. Kęstutis, for your answer. Are there any other questions then? No questions. Mr. Kęstutis Lančinskas, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to maybe summarize what we have heard, or unless my colleague Inessa want to add something here. No, if there are no questions or remarks, let us summarize. When facing the aggressor's actions, we probably cannot expect a peaceful resolution. The three Baltic states, three Baltic sisters, as well as Poland and other European Union member states have to be united and never forget who aggressor is, and always emphasize that. We need to coordinate our actions to stop threats. The regime does not deserve our financial support, among other things. For example, buying unsafe power, no matter how cheap it may seem. We should take decisions which are acceptable for all of us, because this is the way when we can win much more. As far as the illegal migrant crisis is concerned, we don't have the final solution. However, there are actions that EU member states can do to convince the European Union to take all the legal measures, seeking that threats of Lukashenko regime are stopped. Thank you so much for this part of our session. Now we can have a very short break, and Mr. Andrius Kupčinskas will take over the chairing of the next session meeting. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, please take your seats and we will start. Gerbiami kolegos, šiek tiek atsiprašau, kad vėlavome, užtruko pietus, galiu patikinti, kad deserto ir kavos net atsisakėme, bet tęskime mūsų darbą ir noriu pasakyti, kad iš tiesų Baltijos Asamblėja ir Baltijos...
I can assure you that the Baltic Assembly and the Baltic Council of Ministers have prepared a joint statement, and the draft statement has been given to you, which shows the system of our cooperation in 2022. We have signed the documents together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and now we continue with our session. We are going to hear the reports of our committees. Since we work in the global environment, when working together, we are stronger as we learn from each other. This is why it is so important for us to have friends and partners on the global level. Therefore, I would like to invite representatives of the foreign countries and international agencies. Here I have a list in front of me. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Doerti Pacheco, President of the Interparliamentary Union.
Let's start from...
Colleagues, let's start from the President of the Nordic Council.
Dear Baltic friends, on behalf of the Nordic Council, I would like to express my warmest congratulations on the 30th anniversary of your Baltic Assembly. And also let me congratulate you on your very exciting 40th session program. I'm very sorry that I cannot participate in person as planned, but hopefully the corona situation will be better soon so that we can meet again as we have done so often. We have all been hard hit by COVID-19, but our democratic institutions and Baltic-Nordic cooperation remain strong. We have met several times digitally on the political level, and our secretariat also have had excellent cooperation. The Baltic Assembly and the Nordic Council have a long and proud history of cooperation. Today, it's flourishing. The Baltic and Nordic regions are among the most integrated in the world. We share democracy, the rule of law, and human rights, values that are under pressure all over the world, and now even also within the EU. That makes it even more important that we stand together for our values. The Baltic Assembly and the Nordic Council globally has a task of filling out part of the gap that was left when Britain left us through Brexit. We should strengthen the Northern European voice in Europe, together with partners like Netherlands, Germany, and others. You know better than anyone else what it means to fight for freedom. 30 years ago, I visited your countries, and since then, and long before then, I have admired your strong national culture that was so decisive when you survived as independent nations. We are very happy to have you as friends at the other side of the Baltic Sea. We want to work as closely as possible with you within the Baltic and Nordic cooperation. And one of the projects that I'm working with is the so-called NOBIT project, the Nordic Baltic ID project, which will solve a lot of border barriers between our countries. It's just one example of how we can improve our cooperation in the future. We are all affected by cybercrime, by misinformation, disinformation, and we really need to stand together to counter that pressure mainly coming from the East. Together we stand for a greener, a healthier, and more climate-friendly Baltic Sea region. We stand together as partners in Europe, and the ties between the Baltic countries and the Nordic countries have never been stronger. That is why I'm so honored to have been able to address you, and that's why I'm really looking forward to meet you again. And the fact that you even wanted to reward me and the Nordic Council makes my feelings even stronger when I thank you warmly.
I thank President of the Nordic Council, and now I would like to give the floor to the President of the Benelux Parliament, Patricia Croix.
President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I offer my sincerest apologies for not attending the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly in person. With this video message, I want to make my voice heard on the Benelux and Baltic cooperation. On behalf of the Benelux Parliament and in my capacity of President of the Benelux Parliament, I would like to express my gratitude to the host of the Baltic Assembly for giving me the floor at the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly. 1994 was the beginning of a beautiful friendship between our interparliamentary assemblies. 1994 was the year when the Baltic Benelux Parliamentary Cooperation started. A joint declaration was adopted, aimed at cooperation in a number of specific domains such foreign policies, energy, economics, culture and transborder cooperation. Even today, that particular declaration is still the framework of our cooperation. Throughout the years, the cooperation has expanded and taken new forms, priority fields and formats. Since 2006, both interparliamentary assemblies have already agreed upon 8 decisions on priorities of cooperation between the Baltic Assembly and the Benelux Parliament. In this document, the priorities are set out for the next 2 years. Recently, we have agreed upon a decision on priorities of cooperation for the years 2022 and 2023. Our organization have decided to focus the coordination of activities on the following 6 priorities of cooperation: exchange of information on practices to combat COVID-19, security and defense cooperation with an emphasis on cybersecurity and cooperation with the Eastern Partnership countries, digital transformation, interconnectivity, circular economy and interconnected education system on mutual recognition of qualification in the Baltic and Benelux states. In June 2021, the Benelux countries and the Baltic states have officially launched the Treaty on the Automatic Mutual Recognition of Higher Education Degree Levels. Anyone graduating from an educational establishment in the Benelux will have disqualification automatically recognized by institutions and employers in the Baltic states. The Benelux countries and the Baltic states are the only region in the European higher education area where the level of higher education qualification is automatically recognized. We are thus pioneers in this field. Mr. President, dear colleagues, I look forward to signing the cooperation protocol in the upcoming months that strengthens our long and beautiful friendship with the Baltic states. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the President of the Benelux Parliament, and now I would like to give the floor to the President of the BSPC, Mr. Piriniemi.
Honorable Chair, colleagues, Excellencies, guests and friends. On behalf of the Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference, I congratulate you on your 40th Baltic Assembly. Since Lithuania played a crucial role in Baltic Sea cooperation in 2021, it is ideal that the 40th Baltic Assembly is taking place in Vilnius. Lithuania held the presidency of the CPSS and gave the impulses emanating from through the CBS Vision 2030 in June. Furthermore, you organized a brilliant Baltic Sea Strategy Summit where governments and many stakeholders discussed all facets of current Baltic Sea cooperation. Your Assembly has rounded out Lithuania's impetus to Baltic Sea cooperation this year by focusing on the parliamentary dimension of cooperation in the Baltic Sea region. Particularly in these politically challenging times with their foreign policy challenges and with the difficulties that the pandemic still demands from all of us, especially in these weeks, parliamentary cooperation and parliamentary diplomacy, also strengthening our democratic foundations, are more critical than ever. These times require from us, in addition to the aforementioned foreign policy and pandemic-related changes, solutions on further fundamental tasks and problems, such as the global climate crisis, which, if want to be successful, call for fundamental restructuring in our economic and social interaction. It is of fundamental importance to build on long-standing, close, reliable, and trusting cooperation to find adequate solutions for such tough challenges. For many years, the Baltic Assembly and the BSPC have enjoyed a very close, intensive, and efficient cooperation. We base our cooperation on mutual trust, reliability, and friendship. Linkage through people could not be closer. Presidents and vice presidents of the Baltic Assembly have been presidents of the BSPC, sometimes at the same time for a while. We have common goals. We have similar priorities. We enrich each other and often deepen the same topics, thereby achieving synergy effects on a broader level. For the Swedish BSPC presidency this year, it was crucial to focus on core issues, to stabilize our democratic fundamentals, strengthen the rules of law, and take care that fundamental rights and democratic fundamentals are increased rather than weakened by the pandemic and by the digital developments. We underline that democratic values, the rule of law, human rights, free media, a robust civil society and strong NGOs, as well as equal opportunities for all, are the foundation of our cooperation. We highlighted that the exchange among youth and young people is the prerequisite for guaranteeing and securing these foundations of the Baltic Sea region for future generations. The young generation, in considering their demands, are of particular concern to us. We further welcome the Vilnius II Declaration, a vision for the Baltic Sea region by 2030. We urge commitment to building, expanding, and deepening trust between the nations of the Baltic Sea region and in all its collaborations. We want our governments to strengthen prosperity, safety, security, and a regional identity for all people in the Baltic Sea region, and we want them to tackle current and future challenges and crises through increased joint action. We want prosperity, as well as an ecologically stable and sound environmental condition for future generations to be considered as a fundamental right in today's decision-making processes. That concerns questions of constitutional principles and rights. We further urge our government to use all means at our disposal to communicate with Belarus to sustainably ensure human rights, peace and democracy in that country as an essential part of the Baltic Sea region and of Europe. After the second digital annual conference in 2022, the 31st Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference will take place on 12th to 14th of June 2022. In Stockholm, in the Parliament of Sweden. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, Honored Chair, the Baltic Assembly and the BSPC have a shared vision, and that is of particular importance in a tense and inflamed situation. We want to live in a free, peaceful and prosperous Baltic Sea region. That was our core vision in 1991, and it remains our challenge today and our mutual wish for tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, dear President.
Dėkoju prezidentui, o dabar norėčiau suteikti žodį Guam parlamentinės asamblėjos pirmininkui
Mr. George Kalashvili.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the Guam Parliamentary Assembly, thank you for the invitation and also for the fruitful cooperation between our assemblies. Due to the pandemic, this cooperation has not been very active lately, but we hope it will be reinvigorated soon, because it is essential to the needs of our peoples. Parliamentary cooperation and diplomacy is of high importance to our nations, because in the region with challenged democracies, it is essential to hear the voice of the people, both from governments and the opposition at international fora. Also, on behalf of Georgia, I would like to extend our gratitude to our Baltic friends for all the support that my country receives and appreciates from Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. The friendly bonds between our peoples are and will remain strong in future. It is obvious to everybody that security situation in our region is deteriorating, with the resurgence of Russian revisionism and continued aggression against Georgia and Ukraine, and blackmail against Moldova. Our territorial integrity is compromised by Russia on a daily basis, which expresses itself through direct military aggression, borderization, suppression of human rights on occupied territories, and the hybrid means of aggression. Russia now has its troops stationed in all 3 states of the Caucasus and exerts political pressure on the process of meaningful and long-lasting resolution of regional conflicts. For a year now, we had relative peace and stability around the Karabakh conflict, which gives us a glimmer of hope that there are prospects of better and peaceful future in the region. However, without active participation of the West, more invigorated Russia may create additional obstacles to regional stability. In addition to existing problems, COVID pandemic is ravaging the Caucasus, creating additional pressures on regional governments, and so we are very grateful to our Baltic friends for active and invaluable support in our fight against the pandemic. Now, what can we learn from Baltic experience if we pause and reflect on the 30th anniversary of the creation of the Baltic Assembly and independence of all our nations? 4 things come to mind. First, pro-Western orientation is justified because it is a path to prosperity and peace and stability. This is why we look to NATO and the European Union as our future. Please accept our gratitude for your support to our European and Euro-Atlantic path, including today's statements by Ministers of Foreign Affairs in terms of associated membership and in broader Eastern Partnership format. We are looking forward to the Eastern Partnership Summit in December. Second, regional cooperation is essential for development. Guam, of course, is an important tool, but Georgia is also keen to bring together our colleagues from Armenia and Azerbaijan to discuss new ways of dialogue, including in the parliamentary format. We already have such experience to a larger degree through Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine Parliamentary Assembly. Third, without democracy, genuine development and stability is impossible to achieve. We are committed to resolving the current political crisis in Georgia exclusively by democratic means. And fourth and final, we cannot confine democratic development to our national or European borders. The illegal migration crisis demonstrates that there will always be security challenges if democracy and human rights are not upheld throughout the region. Freedom cannot be contained by national borders. And in conclusion, let me thank you again for your support and wish you success in future. Thank you.
Thank you, dear President. And now I'm inviting Duarte Pacheco, President of Inter-Parliamentary Union.
Honorable President of the Baltic Assembly, Madam Deputy Speaker, dear colleagues, we are all parliamentarians, so colleagues, I think, is the best word to address all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for the invitation sent to the IPU to attend this important event that celebrates 30 years of the Baltic Assembly, especially after 8 months that was a nightmare to all of us. It is a pleasure to be here. First, as a person. You are, all of you, freedom fighters. You defend freedom and democracy with your hands. And so, to all Democrats, you are one example. Thank you so much for everything you do in your own countries to defend the state of law, the freedoms, the democracy. Second, as President of IPU, because, yes, we have 179 members in our organization, more than 46,000 parliamentarians. We are the largest and the oldest multilateral organization of the world. The oldest, in 1889, was born IPU. And because we put parliamentarians talking each other, sharing different opinions, try to defend their own ideas, of course, but try to achieve solutions to global problems, IPU won not once, but twice, the Peace Nobel Prize. So, it is important to the IPU to give incentive dialogue between countries and parliamentarians all over the world. It happened a few months ago when we had one more prize in the Middle East, when we put parliamentarians from Palestine and Israel talking together. I don't know how many forums where it was possible, but it happened in our organization. So we are working to defend dialogue between countries, between regions, between parliamentarians, and also to share experiences, because all we know that the best practice that can be achieved in one country can be adopted by the other countries to fight corruption, to fight human trafficking, to fight climate change, for instance, to incentivize the gender participation in politics, in equilibrium in gender participation in politics, to incentivize the youth to come back to politics. It's impossible to believe in an inclusive democracy if we left half of the population out of representation, or if we don't involve the youth in politics as well. I think we all remember what happened at the UK when they have the referendum about the Brexit. The young people didn't vote. After it, they didn't like the results. And they make a petition to the Parliament with 8 million of signatures asking for a second referendum. Of course, it is not possible to repeat the referendums just because you don't like the results of the first one. But it shows to all of us how it's important to involve youth since the beginning in our political process. And so we understand that this is essential to defend democracy. Democracy, dear friends, believe me, is like flowers, like the beautiful flowers that we saw yesterday given to the people that won the medals. They need water every day. If we don't give water, the flowers will die. The same happens with democracy. If we don't defend it every day, sometimes we will cry when the beginnings of crisis appear against democracies. And there is a lot of dangers against democracies. Inside our democracies, with social media, for instance, that can destroy everyone and that can create fake news about anyone. Do you remember that in the elections of the US, for instance, in Montenegro was created 40,000 false Facebook persons against Hillary Clinton. Why? There is in Montenegro a movement against Hillary? No. It was a campaign created using the social media. And that it was a concrete interference during the electoral process. So we need to understand that we need to work together to defend democracy, because we as parliamentarians defend the essential values of democracy. But what happened in the last 18 months showed to us, to all of us, the importance also of multilateralism. A small virus, a small enemy that happened, that was began in one part of Asia, very easily attack all of us, in Europe, in America, in Africa. And if we have a solution for that right now, it's just because all scientists of the world work together, without religions, without political ideas, try to find a solution to a danger that affects all countries of the world, all human beings. The importance of multilateralism. And also, we understand this is what we need to other global problems as well, like climate change. It's impossible to think that one country per se will resolve the problem of climate change. Only if we make common compromises, we will have a future in our planet. And this is what we have now in Glasgow, a conversation to try to find solutions, where parliamentarians will have also a special role, because we need to ask our governments if the results didn't happen as we wish, because we wish, and it's important to the human beings, to have concrete results about climate change and how to fight it. And we parliamentarians, we will have also a role when we discuss our budget, the strategy of growth. For instance, the last conference of speakers of parliament that happened in Vienna last September, the speakers make one agreement. We wish to grow, but sustainable growth. Of course, I think it was a very peaceful agreement, a very peaceful resolution. But now, what we hope is to pass from words to concrete actions. Not just a compromise from the speakers of parliament, a very nice compromise, but concrete actions in their own countries. And so, this is what we should think. And we have here, in this assembly of the Baltic, the example. You work together. You work together to find solutions to common problems. You work together, try to make more easily grow for your economy and to give more development to the people you represent. You are one example. That's why it is a pleasure to be here. But, dear colleagues, please, when we came back home, we should continue the work we begin in these sessions. You can count with IPU to share all the experiences, to share with all of you the best practices. Please contact us. If you wish a complete legislation about one issue, we can send to you examples that happen in other countries. And then you will study, you will adapt to your reality if you think it is important. You work together. We will work together. That's why I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for including me in your session, for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and I hope to have very nice results during these 2 days of work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear President, for being here with us, and thank you for your incredible speech. Now I'm inviting Mr. Alun Alaverdiev, head of the Azerbaijan delegation, to a Guam Parliamentary Assembly. Please.
Thank you very much. I will continue my speech in another international languages. Уважаемые коллеги, дамы и господа, позвольте от имени парламента Азербайджанской Республики Милли Маджлиса поблагодарить вас за...
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me, on behalf of our parliament, to thank you for the invitation to this honorable forum, and I would like to transfer the congratulations of our Majlis on the 30th anniversary of your organization. Our cooperation and joint work in this format has its own history, just like the cooperation between Guam Parliamentary Assembly and the Baltic Assembly. On the international level, Azerbaijan is happy to cooperate with all the assemblies, and I believe that our relations have very good prospects, both within the framework of the Guam Parliamentary Assembly, the Baltic Assembly, and we have to take advantage of that. You know that we look upon the Baltic Assembly as some successful platform, a bridge that allows to intensify the interaction with other countries, with Guam Parliamentary Assembly, and we hope to continue cooperation in the future as well. The contacts of such high-level organization is like a door that is opened towards the parliamentary organizations like Benelux Parliament, Visegrad Group, and at the same time, it also means that these organizations get access to Guam Parliamentary Assembly. In our view, we have to use all the opportunities, all the possibilities that allow cooperation in all these formats, particularly in the political level. Azerbaijan actively supports all the independent initiatives of our region, and this is a big honor for us and a big responsibility at the same time. Azerbaijan has experience of participation in major organizations, international organizations, which allows us to establish contacts with European partners through Guam Parliamentary Assembly and also directly. And today, we have a good opportunity to improve our cooperation with the Baltic Assembly.
Как вы знаете, Азербайджан занимает особое место в архитектуре энергетической безопасности европейского континента.
As representatives of Guam, PA, and Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan is bringing its own contribution to energy security of the EU, as we are stable partners in this particular field, and we try to remain such a partner. Alongside with the oil sector, we can also develop our cooperation in the logistical field, and we also intend to launch a big seaport. We have good prospects in the agriculture, the field of tourism. The pandemic has created indefinite situation, but this, in its turn, urged us to develop some sectors even more. In our country, we are now starting a new period, and we are very happy about the end of the war that has been lasting 30 years now. Our territorial integrity is back, and with our forces, we managed to ensure the implementation of the resolutions of the UN Security Council. Our position is that the conflict of the Karabakh is over. Azerbaijan managed to preserve its territorial integrity. At the same time, I would like to note that we don't have another territory like Nagorno-Karabakh. In this particular territory, we have East Zangezulu territory. Eastern Zenge Zulu is a historical name of this region. Let me briefly mention that when we felt the support of the Guam, the partners of the Guam Parliamentary Assembly in our aspirations, we felt really supported. The territory was occupied, 8 cities and hundreds of villages were destroyed, and it is our wish to recreate this territory so that almost 1 million of residents come back to live in this territory. All the infrastructure is destroyed, houses taken apart, and our cemeteries also destroyed. Hundreds of households, our cultural objects burned. In the ruins of our churches, they used to keep in 8 months, we managed to reopen a new airport in the territories. We have plans for rebuilding our cities. We try to find decisions to employment in this region. Azerbaijan is going to use exceptionally green energy sources there. In this Evangelano region, we had a solemn opening of the first village quite recently. We would also like to invite our friends from the Baltic states to participate in our economic projects because it can contribute to fostering our relations on the economic level in the future. The participation in your events is big joy and responsibility for us. Therefore, let me thank you for the invitation. I do believe that we have a large potential to achieve a lot of further victories on this political context. And the projects of Guam Parliamentary Assembly and those of the Baltic Assembly have a potential to be successfully developed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Elnur Alverdiev, for your speech, for your vision about the development of Guam and Azerbaijan as well. And now I am asking Ms. Maria Alexandra Kefala, representative of PAPSEC Economic Committee and representing also the Parliament of Greece, to take the floor. Please, floor is yours.
Dear Mr. President, distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and privilege for me to address such a distinguished audience and to express my gratitude to the President of the Baltic Assembly for inviting the Parliamentary Assembly of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation to take part in this very important gathering. Although we have not seen each other in person for more than 1 year, we managed to overpass the obstacles and reaffirm the importance of the international and regional cooperation. The Baltic Assembly and the PAPSEC has consequently deepened their cooperation through mutual participation in our assemblies and conferences and in the margins of a series of international parliamentary events. The main element that connects our regions is the importance we attach to our seas. Although the distance between the Baltic and the Black Sea is big, our aims are similar and common. By providing a great platform for discussion and problem solving, our assemblies focus to their vision that parliamentarians should work together in protecting and ensuring security, peace and prosperity in our regions, establishing the rule of law, safeguarding the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, and moreover encourage economic, commercial, technological, environmental, cultural and educational cooperation between states. Toward these goals, regional assemblies and institutions have a great role to play by debating and finding solutions to challenging regional and global problems such as climate change, sustainable development, energy security, fight against terrorism and organized crime, issues that can't be dealt with the ways and means of a single country. Recently, the COVID-19 pandemic was added to the list of challenges, showing in the hard way the importance of regional and international cooperation. Just like the Baltic Assembly, PAPSEC gives great emphasis to the benefits of parliamentary cooperation, paying great respect to the social justice, democracy, human rights and freedoms, prosperity and welfare of the people in our region. The COVID-19 pandemic disease disrupted life around the world and also the normal economic activity unprecedentedly. It's a real global challenge which has affected nearly all the countries in the world. It has posed severe threats to the world economy and the country's economic growth, as well as the normal functioning of societies. As guardians of democratic values, the parliaments of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation member states played and keep playing an important role in confronting the impact of the pandemic. It was vital that the parliaments of these countries continued to function throughout the pandemic situation, passing necessary economic aid packages and emergency public health measures, while attempting to ensure the democratic control, share information transparently and hold the executive branch to account for the mobilization of recovery programs and urgent policies. They adapted to the new reality. They utilized new technologies, worked in extraordinary regime, and played a crucial role in ensuring that emergency measures are introduced and implemented adequately and timely. As the COVID-19 continues to place strong demands on governments, legislators are uniquely called to respond to both the short and long-term needs of the public, share information transparently, and hold the executive branch to account for the mobilization of programs and services. They play an important role in delivering clear messages to the public and preventing the dissemination of rumors and panic. Fighting the virus requires the involvement and participation of all segments of society, as well as respect for human rights. Greater use of technology in a pandemic and the full and meaningful participation of parliaments and parliamentarians can provide new impetus for stronger cooperation. The PAPSEC is focused on the role of parliaments in overcoming the current economic crisis caused by the pandemic, forging consensus around the key measures to put economies back on track. Dear colleagues, I would like to assure you that the Parliamentary Assembly of Black Sea Economic Cooperation fully supports your efforts to intensify cooperation to address the challenges in the region. Both members of PAPSEC and the Baltic Assembly have been convinced that more can be accomplished than working together. Cooperation is mutually reinforcing, and the constant contacts with parliaments abroad help share experience and best practices among parliament members and furthermore foster understanding between political decision makers in the countries concerned. In this respect, it's important to consolidate the cooperation among the parliaments and the inter-parliamentary assemblies belonging to different regions of the world. The PAPSEC is open and ready for deepening the cooperation with Baltic Assembly and other interparliamentary assemblies, not only for Europe, but from the whole world, with which it shares common values and interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And now I am inviting my colleague, Audronius Ažubalius, the head of Lithuanian delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly.
Dear President Kupčinskas, Excellencies, colleagues and friends, let me start, first of all, to expressing my deepest condolences to the Latvia's delegation for the sudden death of a prominent Latvian politician, Ojaras Kalniņš, who was a long-time member of Latvia's delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly. He was a real patriot, not just of Latvia, but he was patriot of Baltic states, patriot of Baltic unity. We always will remember him. Colleagues, I am delighted here to represent the NATO Parliamentary Assembly at this 14th session of the Baltic Assembly and 27th Baltic Council meeting. It's a great honor for me to represent here NATO Parliamentary Assembly and personally President Jerry Connolly and send his warmest greetings to all of you. And of course share some thoughts about some of the priorities of NATO Parliamentary Assembly's agenda. Colleagues, particularly the strong focus our Assembly puts on the need to strengthen our democracies in the face of growing challenge posed by autocratic regimes in Russia, China, and elsewhere. We must all stand up to autocracy. We cannot let Russia or China threaten or blackmail us. Lithuania is paying a higher price for its firm stance, but we will not let ourselves be intimidated by Russia and Belarus' unacceptable campaign of forced migration or by China's attempts to punish Lithuania for its independent foreign policy. Our friends in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly supports us. At our annual session in Lisbon a month ago, our political and economics and security committees both adopted reports and resolutions that condemned Russia's, Belarus, and China's efforts to destabilize and pressure the Baltic states. There is also a solid consensus within the Assembly that Russia remains the most immediate threat to NATO and NATO allies, and that we must therefore strengthen our policy of strong defense and deterrence. This includes NATO's enhanced forward presence in the Baltic states and in Poland. Similarly, there is a growing consensus within our Assembly about the systemic challenge which China poses to the rules-based international order, and we need to adopt a common approach to China within NATO. President Connolly was in fact rapporteur on China for our political committee in 2020 and outlined the contours of a possible NATO policy which would seek to engage China where possible, compete with China to promote our interests and values, and counter it when we must. This is why we support the important process of updating NATO's strategic concept, the alliance's main strategic guidance. The previous strategic concept dates back to 2010. It defines Russia as a strategic partner and does not even mention China. The Assembly agrees that this must change, and we have begun elaborating our recommendations for how NATO should adapt to these challenges going forward. Let me mention two of the priorities for the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, which are important for the Baltic states too. First, The NATO Parliamentary Assembly has historically been a strong supporter of NATO enlargement, including for the Baltic states. Today, it continues to support Georgia and Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. Just last week, I participated in the meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Interparliamentary Council in Odessa, where we reaffirmed our firm support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and our continued condemnation of Russia's illegal occupation of Crimea and aggression in eastern Ukraine. Second, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly helps strengthen the unique transatlantic bond. NATO Parliamentary Assembly President Connolly has been a particularly committed advocate for NATO in the United States Congress. The Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, attended our session in Lisbon, her third NATO Parliamentary Assembly meeting in 3 years, to reaffirm Congress' support for NATO. This should reassure all of us in the Baltic states about the strength of the NATO and of the alliance's commitment to the security of all its members. It should also encourage us to continue to play our part in adopting NATO for the future, putting our shared democratic values at the heart of this adaptation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, dear colleague. And now I'm inviting Helen Nilsson, the Director of Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Lithuania, please.
Thank you, and thank you, President, and dear colleagues and friends. I will try to bring you back to Nordic-Baltic cooperation. Thank you for inviting the Nordic Council of Ministers offices in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius to be here with you today. Yesterday, I came back home to Vilnius from Copenhagen and the Nordic Council session 2021. So I very much feel like a bridge between the Baltics and the Nordics countries, as I should, being the director of the Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Vilnius. Our offices in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius opened 1991. So we also celebrate 30 years of anniversary. And when it comes to the Nordic Council of Ministers' international work, you have already heard the president of the Nordic Council emphasizing that we definitely focus most of our international work in the Baltic Sea region, and more specifically in the Baltic states, knowing that this is the only place where we have offices outside the Nordic countries. Our mandate is to develop, initiate, strengthen, facilitate, and maybe also manage Nordic-Baltic cooperation with the relevant partners in the Nordics and in the Baltic countries. In line with our vision to become the most sustainable integrated region in the world in 2030. This is also a mandate I have here working, and my colleagues in Riga and Tallinn working with Nordic-Baltic cooperation. We are aiming to have a green, a competitive and socially sustainable region. Allow me just to mention some of our regional Nordic-Baltic projects for the time being. We have mobility programs for public administration as well as cultural cooperation. We work in the field of bioeconomy, media grant scheme, Of course, digitalization, gender, education, social and health, integration of migrants, support to the civil society, a pictogram project where we, all 8 countries, are implementing a pictogram scheme at the same time, built on Danish setup, we could say. Women Go Tech, and of course culture. And one of our projects right now is a children book fair exhibition in the different libraries here in Lithuania, in Panevėžys. And our very much target group for our activities are very often children and youth. But we always implement our projects and activities together with partners, never alone, partners in the Baltics and in the Nordic countries. And we always mainstream into all our activities children and youth, equal opportunities, and sustainability. In the field of education, we have our by all 8 countries supported project Nord Plus, where schools, teachers, students can apply to work together in our region. And we can also, I'm very glad to say that we can also see more and more Nordic-Baltic cooperation in the field of research, together with our sister organization Nordforsk in Oslo and the National Research Councils. Lastly, I would like to mention that my office here in Vilnius also cover our, so to say, portfolio for Belarus, where we focus very much to support the civil society that has already been mentioned today, but also independent media. Lastly, I would like to congratulate you for established for a few years back, maybe, the Baltic Culture Fund, referring to the Nordic Culture Fund and all great culture activities we have managed to support over the years. Because I do believe we all, I'm not a politician, but I think all of us need more culture in our life, and that also creates good international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Helena. Now I'm inviting Arkadiusz Mularczyk, the deputy from the Polish Seimas.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you very much for inviting the Polish delegation to the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly and the 25th Baltic Council with the Visegrad Group countries. In my short speech, I would like to refer to the Belarusian hybrid attack and the defense against it of the EU's external borders, which are also our common borders, our Baltic states and Poland. Deterrence and defense are the pillars of the NATO in accordance with the spirit of Article 5 with regard to priorities activities of Russia within the operational area of the eastern flank, allied solidarity, enhancing defense and deterrence capabilities of the alliance in this region remains crucial. Poland supports the activities of the Baltic states at NATO and in many issues represents similar stance. Poland actively participates in European peace facilities, Baltic air policing, and continues its military cooperation with the US also in terms of American presence in Poland. which positively affects the security of the entire eastern flank of the alliance, we will continue these efforts. Poland is consistently interested in increasing the practical use of the Latvia Poland-Ukraine Brigade, which is a key platform of Lithuanian, Polish, Ukrainian military cooperation. Most of all, we want to increase its participation in the defense sector reform in Ukraine, particularly through units' participation in the NATO and EU initiatives. It would strengthen its original mission to serve as a transmission belt of the Western standards to Ukrainian officers serving there, as well as Ukrainian units trained by the Lithuanian, Polish, Ukrainian Brigade on the territory of Ukraine. We count on Lithuanians' support and cooperation in that regard. We draw our attention to the need for a balanced EU defense offer for southern and eastern partners and the need to realistically assess Russia's position. Russia's real goals in relation to our region and actually the entire Euro-Atlantic community is to expand its influence and supremacy in as many domains and as far as we allow it to do so. Russian aggressive military politics, as well as initiative development of its military capabilities with special regard given to the Western Military District, pose a direct special regard given to the Western Military District, pose a direct threat to our region and NATO as a whole. Moscow tries to manifest its strength and test the reaction of the EU-Atlantic community on its military activities, especially the solidarity of allies and the determination to implement assurance measures on the eastern flank. The priority of the collective defense should be restored in NATO. In use, the priority of collective defense should be restored in NATO, a new strategic concept. Further development of allied institutional structures, including maintaining presence of NATO states forces at the eastern flank, is also important in this regard. Zapad 21 strategic exercise was another demonstration of strength close to NATO borders. By making the Zapad drills large-scale and confrontational, Russia wants to demonstrate that it is able to conduct coordinated action across its entire Western strategic direction. Maneuvers also confirm high degree of interpretability of the Russian and Belarusian armed forces. The ongoing military integration between Moscow and Minsk carries serious consequences for the security of states of the eastern flank NATO. We accept further adaptation of NATO in this context. There is a need for intensified exercise activity in the Baltic Sea region. We are also concerned about Russia's efforts to challenge states in our region with hybrid warfare instrument. It is of particular importance that countering hybrid warfare is part of collective defense. Zapad 21 was conducted at the time of Belarusian hybrid attack targeting NATO and EU. The aim of this willing to cause a crisis is to trigger another migration war which will impact borders of Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. There are a number of indicators of expected escalation of Belarusian border. Guards towards Polish military and police personnel on the border is growing. Minsk has awarded visas for a number of countries and his certified airfield, which is just a few kilometers away from the Polish and Lithuanian borders. As an international airport, these preparations are aimed to ensure a persistent migrants flow towards our borders. Regime's operation is accompanied by disinformation campaign targeting Poland and the Baltic states. The ultimate goal of these activities is to destabilize the region, cause uncertainty among allies, and feed political divisions among societies of target countries. As a response, we should maintain allied unity and coherence in communication efforts. We support Lithuania in its national efforts to strengthen security at the borders. We are pleased with the fact that we share the same perspective on the unprecedented hybrid operation conducted by Minsk. Information exchange and naturally provided assistance demonstrates our strongly solidarity. We are satisfied with the decision to deploy NATO counter-hybrid support team to Lithuania in September. It is an example of proper identification of the geopolitical situation. We expect our allies to publicly show solidarity and political support for Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, encouraging other allies states to, by using their diplomatic channels, put pressure on countries of migrants' origin and transport hubs to stop trips to Belarus seems also to be a good direction. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you, dear colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Arkadiusz. Let me invite the good friends of all of us, the head of Parliamentary Assembly of European Council, Mr. Emanuele Zingers. Yes, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, first of all, dear Andrews, dear Yanis, dear Sven, after serving here in this parliament for the last 30 years, I'll multiply time become a head of Lithuanian delegation to Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. I'm so glad to see many faces who are together with us in all parliamentary assemblies, defending set of values, our commitments to democracy. Just Arkadiusz, who is at the same time, Mr. Chairman, is the head of a Polish delegation to Council of Europe, together with me can share with you that we created Baltic Plus group in our parliamentary assembly, and Maria Sufereva Skorotovska and Inessa Libinia Egnere, both ladies, they are chairing the Latvian and Estonian delegation, and Baltic Plus group become a group who include British friends, Ukrainians, Georgians, even Turkish delegation, part of Turkish delegation, and we have probably created big front trying to oppose imperial trends from Russia and from China to interrupt our democratic life in Council of Europe, 48 member states. So in Vilnius, here you are in the moment on the brink when we decided to let our Taiwanese friends to open Taiwanese, not Taipei, but Taiwanese delegation. Probably it will be happen in the next 10 days. And we say goodbye. We said goodbye to 17+1 club of Chinese friends inside. Well, we have idea here in Lithuania that we should speak in one voice with China. 27 countries should speak in one voice with People's Republic of China. Not let us to divide and have some internal clubs of Chinese friends. So that was the reason that we make other step about Taiwan, and we are here in the world in the front of very important event when President Biden declared on the 8th and 9th of December World Summit for Democracy. So on the 19th of November, we will have a small summit of democracy in Vilnius. Ministry of Foreign Affairs doing that. And we will try to make a draft resolution, and we hope that this draft resolution approved by our summit in Vilnius will become a reality during Biden Washington Summit for Democracy, December 8, December 9. So having Arkady Mularczyk just painted for you the terrible picture of hybrid war created artificially by means dictator with support from Moscow against Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, we would like to answer not only strengthening our defense line on the border. And please understand that this line is not related to any anti-human behaviors. We are in favor to take over kids, women who are just on our territories on third countries. And before that, we took more like 2,000 Belarusian political refugees with Madam Tikhanovskaya in Vilnius. Don't forget that we are building the carton, the border together with Poland and Latvia, not against simple human beings, but, well, that is the political decision by Minsk to press us to change our political line. And I'm just granting to you, like signatory fact of independence, and 8-time elected person from Lithuania, and of course sure that Latvian, Estonian colleagues and Nordic colleagues will be together with us, that our answer will be crystal clear. We will be not raped in the Baltic countries and in Poland to change our foreign policy line towards dictatorships. Minsk will not receive from us change of Polish foreign affairs line and Baltic line, Lithuania, Latvia, not change the attitude against dictator Lukashenko, supporting Tikhanovskaya and opposition team, and we will be on the democracy side. For that reason, I'm glad to encourage everyone in every delegation, in every international parliamentary organization, encourage you to strengthen our commitment to democracy and try to keep the future line not only internal solidarity, not only democracy, maturity of democracy and human rights inside of our Baltic Assembly body and other bodies, but at the same time to include defense. That's not Ronald Reagan, rhetorics. Not only done related to the right party line, center, left party line is related to our reality. We should defend democratic space in the world, and if Taiwan, for example, is democratic, we should include Parliament of Taiwan to interparliamentary bodies like a parliament. And statehood of Taiwan is the next question. So from my point of view, I would like to say thank you for the Baltic Assembly, especially for creating the cultural fund from your side. It was a very important step. And I would like to say that Nordic and Baltic, we are always together. You were among first to recognize our independence from the Nordic side. I was in Iceland and in Oslo and in Sweden and in Copenhagen, remembering all your heroes during the 90s, now celebrating our 30 years of reestablishment of our relations and 100 years of our diplomatic relations between North and the Baltic. We should promote democracy and defense of democracy wider, and to have solidarity and democracy first and defense of democracy like our common slogan. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all speakers from international delegations. So now we have to continue our session. And dear colleagues, now I want to invite my colleague, Mr. Valdemaras Valkiūnas, who will report about the budget of Baltic Assembly. in 2020 and 2022, please.
Brangus Baltijos Asamblėjos nariai.
Dear members of the Baltic Assembly, honorable guests, on behalf of the Budget and Audit Committee of the Baltic Assembly, I would like to introduce you to the draft documents on the report of the implementation of the budget of 2020 and budget for 2022, which have been submitted for consideration to all members of the Baltic Assembly. I would like to stress that Budget and Audit Committee of the Baltic Assembly assess validity and cost-effectiveness of the budget jointly with the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly. First, let me introduce you to the draft documents number 4 and 4A, draft reports on the implementation of the budget of the Baltic Assembly in 2020. The source of the Baltic Assembly budget in 2020 were the membership fees from the national parliaments of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. The total amount of the budget is €274,140. I would like to list basic positions of the budget. The 39th session of the Baltic Assembly and the 26th Baltic Council were held remotely. From the total amount of funds allocated for the session and the Baltic Council, €29,171 were spent. From the total amount of funds allocated for the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly meetings, €13,985 were spent. From the total amount of funds allocated for international cooperation, €26,529 were spent. This budgetary position consists of the following sub-positions. First, international parliamentary seminars. Second, cooperation with the Baltic Council of Ministers. Third, cooperation with the Nordic Council, Benelux Parliament, Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference, and partners of the Guam Parliamentary Assembly. From the total amount of funds allocated for informative activities, €3,098 were spent. From the total amount of funds allocated for the Baltic Assembly Prizes and the Baltic Innovation Prize, €36,695 were spent. From the total amount of funds allocated for the Secretariat, €76,416 were spent. These expenditures include salaries for the staff members of the Secretariat, rent of the premises, office equipment, public utilities, communications, stationery, software, and other expenses. From the total amount of funds allocated for unplanned expenses, €500 were spent on changes in currency, exchange rates, and commission fees for money transfers. Total expenditures in 2020 were €186,418. Secondly, I will introduce you to the draft documents number 5 and 5A, draft budget of the Baltic Assembly for 2022. I would like to underline that our budget has been on the same level for the last 10 years. The budget for 2022 is €274,140. The total amount of €20,085 have been transferred from the budget of the Baltic Assembly 2021. The total budget of the Baltic Assembly for 2022 is expected to be €294,205. The budget for the next year has been planned based on program and working plan of the Latvian presidency, and the main budgetary positions are the following. The 41st session of the Baltic Assembly and the 28th Baltic Council will be held on the 27th and 28th of October in Riga. Total expenses planned for the session of the Baltic Assembly and the Baltic Council amount to 41,000 euros. Total expenses planned for the meetings of the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly amount to 13,000 euros. The total expenses planned for international cooperation are 95,550 euros. In this budgetary position, there are international parliamentary seminars, conference, cooperation with BSPC, and cooperation with the Baltic Sea organizations, cooperation with the Nordic Council and Benelux Parliament, and the Guam Parliamentary Assembly. The total expenses planned for the Baltic Assembly prizes and the Baltic Innovation Prize amount to 50,350 euros. The total expenses planned for the Secretariat are planned in the same amount as always, 79,150 euros. The total amount of unplanned expenses is 600 euros. Dear colleagues, draft report on the implementation of the budget for 2020 for 2022 are in your folders of draft documents. However, let me warn you that the inflation is really a dangerous beast. So let us forecast our future budgets more wisely. Thank you for your attention. Good health to you and rich budgets of your states. Have a nice day.
Thank you, dear colleague, for your remarks. And I should say that without the budget, the Baltic Assembly wouldn't be so efficient. So let's go to and proceed with the next questions on our agenda, the adoption of the resolutions and final documents of the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly. I have already introduced the draft documents while I delivered my report about Lithuanian presidency. Do you have any comments, remarks about and regarding the draft documents? No. And I have to mention, and it's a little bit pity that members from Estonian delegation couldn't stay no longer with us because the plane wouldn't not wait, so we excuse. Okay, if no comments and remarks now, I would like to invite you for voting on the draft documents of 40th session of Baltic Assembly. According to our statutes, each delegation has only one vote. And I propose to vote for the draft of final documents of the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly, as all documents are included in this final document. And I invite chairs chairmen to vote on documents. Please.
Yeah, but before I would like to inform you that the chairman of the Estonian delegation approved. The Estonian delegation is in favor of all approval.
Yes, and he signed all documents. Yes, thank you, Yanis. So please vote. Thank you for all the documents are approved. And dear colleagues, we adopted the documents of our session and of Baltic Assembly, and now I invite chairs of the delegation for the signing of the final documents here in the plenary chamber.
Documents are signed and
Okay, dear colleagues, documents already signed, and now I would like to give the floor to our newly elected president of Baltic Assembly, Mr. Jānis Vukans, to introduce to us the Latvian presidency program. Please.
Yes, dear colleagues, I need to inform that the documents that we just signed include also the list of newly elected presidents of and vice presidents of the Baltic Assembly for the next year, chairmen of the committees and vice chairmen of the committees. And it's my duty to accept the position of the president of the Baltic Assembly for the next year, chairing the delegation of Latvia, of Parliament of Latvia. I will follow in my native language in Latvian.
Honorable members of the Baltic Assembly, dear guests, on behalf of the Baltic Assembly and also personally, I would like to thank the still current president of the Baltic Assembly, Andrius Kupčinskas, the secretary Renāte Godfrey, colleagues from the Lithuanian delegation and the Lithuanian parliament, who, despite all the challenges we faced in 2021, managed to ensure productive Baltic interparliamentary cooperation. Dear colleagues, it is my honor to present to you the program of the Latvian presidency in the Baltic Assembly for 2022. During the presidency, our most important duty will be to develop an even closer and broader cooperation in various areas. Latvia will take over the presidency of the Baltic Assembly on the 1st of January 2022, and we are committed to continuing our joint efforts to solve the recovery issues in the Baltic states and to promote sustainable, resilient society and prosperity in the region and hopefully across Europe. Our motto, partnership, prosperity, protection, highlights that ours is cooperation based on close and mutual trust. This will help promote prosperity and protection of our countries. We are committed to strengthening the dialogue, mutual trust, and confidence of the Baltic states. We want to do everything in our power to ensure prosperity and development not only in the Baltic region, but also beyond its borders. For this reason, the priorities of our presidency in the Baltic Assembly are based on a common worldview, interests, and objectives. Next year, the Baltic Assembly will focus on 3 priority areas. First, rapid recovery and sustainable growth of the Baltic states. Second, socially protected people living in a safe and resilient Baltic region. And third, interconnected and innovative Baltic states. Many speakers today have already underlined that the COVID-19 crisis has been and remains a challenging time for the Baltic states. Unfortunately, because of the crisis, many important issues have been neglected, as our countries were constantly dealing with the effects of the virus. The Latvian presidency in the Baltic Assembly will continue to work towards the economic and social stability and swift recovery of the Baltic states. In addition, we plan to address other equally important issues in order to strengthen the cooperation of the Baltic states, their economies and societies, and make this cooperation more efficient. The envisioned cooperation areas are, among others, addressing climate and energy challenges, development of science and technology, promoting innovation, reducing social inequality, combating organized crime, and regional development. Stable economic development can be achieved in the long term by striving for more active engagement in taking opportunities. This can also be achieved if all three Baltic states participate and engage in mutual cooperation within large-scale European science, technology, and innovation organizations, such as the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN, and the European Space Agency. It is also important that we use the cooperation experience of the Baltic Assembly partner organization countries, such as the Nordic countries, the Benelux countries, and also the Visegrad countries. I would also like to emphasize that the working program of the Baltic Assembly for the next year provides a major focus on open dialogue between the Baltic states in order to solve various security, economic, and social issues together and promote faster economic and social recovery in the region. In 2022, we will also pay a lot of attention to the most hard-hit sectors, for example, by looking for ways to support the more vulnerable socioeconomic groups in the Baltic states. We will also seek common solutions for the most hard-hit industries and promote targeted investments in technology and innovation, not only to ensure that our countries recover from the crisis arising from the COVID-19 pandemic as quickly as possible, but also to draw from this experience and strengthen the competitiveness of our countries and their economies on an international scale. Investments in technology and innovation in a wide range of areas are important drivers for rapid development in the Baltic states. Notably, the Latvian presidency will also focus on our joint commitment to achieve climate-neutral Baltic states by 2050 or maybe even earlier. Energy security, sustainability, and interconnectivity will only increase in importance in the years to come. For this reason, the Baltic Assembly, together with the governments of our countries, will aim to find the best possible strategy for the implementation of the European Green Deal in our region. We also discussed it in our conversation with the foreign ministers. It is hard to envision the green transition without the application of flexible business models based on sustainable investments, energy efficiency, sustainable innovation, and circular economy directed towards zero-waste principles. Undeniably, the global crisis has broken or disrupted many important long-standing relations, including close partnerships. Therefore, one of the aims of the Baltic Assembly in the next year will be to renew and strengthen cooperation with our international partners and close allies. We will work towards even stronger regional networks with the Nordic, Benelux, and Visegrad states and our eastern partners. The Baltic Assembly is an excellent format for engaging in a dialogue with parliamentarians all across the world. Judging by the fact that we need to solve problems on a global scale. In 2022, the Baltic Assembly will continue to actively exchange information and best practices with the Nordic and Benelux countries regarding crisis recovery and other issues of mutual concern. The Latvian presidency is also committed to continuing its support for the Eastern Partnership countries and fulfilling the role of a bridge between the Eastern Partnership countries and the Nordic, Benelux, and other EU countries. The Baltic Assembly will continue to support the European aspirations of the Eastern Partnership countries. Next year, we will continue to strengthen the interaction between the Baltic Assembly and the Baltic Council of Ministers to jointly find the best solutions to recover from the crisis, as well as draw conclusions from our experience to be better prepared for future shocks. Comprehensive and coordinated regional cooperation of the Baltic states is of the essence to strive for a more resilient, flexible, and dynamic Baltic region. Dear colleagues, the partnership of the Baltic states is not only the cornerstone of our regional development, but also a driver for prosperity, to reach our common goals, the contribution of each delegation and every member is of utmost importance. Let us work together even harder and with greater focus to strengthen the Baltic partnership so that we can share our successful cooperation experience beyond the Baltic region. I am thankful to everyone, to all the members of delegations, to our cooperation partners for your presence here today for this long workday that we have carried out and completed together. We are committed to further pursuing our joint efforts, overcoming challenges associated with the recovery of our countries from the after effects of the pandemic, and promoting sustainable development, a society resilient to unexpected shocks, and prosperity in the Baltic region and across Europe. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, dear new elected President. Ačiū gerbiami kolegos.
Thank you, colleagues, patient colleagues, the most patient ones, our guests. On behalf of the Baltic Assembly, I would like to thank you for your intense and active work today. We have discussed successes, failures, progress in the cooperation of the Baltic states. We have set the new goals for the next year under the Latvian Presidency. After today's session, the work of the Baltic Assembly will continue in the same intensity. The Lithuanian delegation will continue to fulfill the duties of the presiding country until the end of this year. In the next year, the presidency will pass on Latvia. Before I end the session, I want to say a few words to my colleagues in Latvian delegation. Dear friends and guests, this year we celebrate our 30th anniversary and have introduced a new tradition. I will transfer this beautiful statuette to the newly elected president. Let us hope that this tradition will continue like the basketball tournament we have. This shows the importance of our cooperation. It will be an honor for me to give this statuette to the new presidency.
On behalf of Baltic Assembly, I would like to say best regards to Yanis and the Latvian delegation. We know that the presidency is not an easy task, but it's a great opportunity to lead the Baltic cooperation. By giving you, Yanis, this presidency statute, I announce that the 40th session of the Baltic Assembly is closed. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you for common work and for trust of the delegation as well.
Yes, and last moment and last announcement, at the 19th p.m., the Presidium of the Baltic Assembly invites you to the reception to the City Hall. Thank you, dear colleagues.